We're joined now by Senator Rand Paul, a great state of Kentucky. And Senator Paul, I know there's a ton of things we're going to get into with you, but I want to start with this. Anthony Fauci, the evidence continues to mount that he lied about gain-of-function research. You, uniquely, I think, in the entire political class, have continued to hold his feet to the fire. What is the latest about that you can tell us?
We've been trying to get records on the deliberation of who made the call to send the money to Wuhan, the research, the lab, the leak, who funded it. We know the NIH did it, but we want to know who met about it, who discussed it, and who made the final approval. We think that's Anthony Fauci, and we're getting closer to that. The Biden administration refused to give us any documents. They basically refused for years to give any. Robert Kennedy has opened up the books to us. Jay Bhattacharya at NIH is also helping us. And we're sorting through it, and we're going to begin interviewing everybody who's part of the process. So there's a committee over there that discussed it. When Fauci said everybody told him that it wasn't gain of function, it's interesting, though, that the committee has documents, and in the documents they have EcoHealth Alliance. This is a group that got the money that took it to Wuhan. They have EcoHealth Alliance sending notes back to the NIH saying, thank you for lifting our gain of function pause. So they were paused. The government quit funding gain of function between 2014 and 2016. They thanked them for lifting their pause on the same research that Fauci said was never gain of function. So how do you lift a pause in funding for a project that was never gain of function if it was never a gain of function? So we've got evidence like that, but ultimately once we've interviewed everybody, we will get to Anthony Fauci. That will be within a month or two, and we'll be having him come in and testify.
In terms of that testimony, what are you hoping to be able to get final answers from Fauci on? And given the, Senator Paul, given the preemptive pardon that he was given, which is still pretty remarkable when I say that out loud, that even happened, what are you hoping the final disposition of this whole situation will be?
You know, you realize with a preemptive pardon where they don't even list your crime that he's pardoned for anything. Stealing, larceny, grand larceny, assault, you name it. He's pardoned for anything he could have done over a 10-year period. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. I've never, ever heard of a pardon that's preemptive and also includes any possible crime he committed over a 10-year period. I don't have high hopes that he's going to be ultimately held criminally responsible, but I think it's important that history judges him accurately and harshly. He made a decision that led to the millions of people dying, basically a decision to fund a lab that was not up to safety standards and fund research that was incredibly dangerous. We also are concerned that this kind of research still goes on. So the president came out in the last day or so with a pause, once again, on gain-of-function research, importantly, not just in our country, but a pause on all funding we do around the world because, of course, Uncle Sam funds everybody's research lab everywhere in the world, and some people conjecture Anthony Fauci farmed out because he wanted less scrutiny. So if he wanted, for example, some of the most gruesome stuff that was done on beagles was done in Tunisia. They did in Tunisia, hoping that their sensibilities about sewing their eyelids open and infecting them with sand fleas, and then cutting their larynx out so you couldn't hear the dogs cry, that there'd be less sensibility for that somewhere else other than the United States. But same way with gain of function. We think some of it was farmed out. We need to know the degree of this, and we need to get to the bottom of it. We're also very concerned with a couple of labs near Fort Detrick. Kennedy closed one down, and the media reported he was anti-science. Well, I heard the accurate story from Jay Bhattacharya. The accurate story is someone's hazmat suit was purposely cut in one of the areas dealing with Ebola and different very dangerous viruses. So getting that kind of disease out of a lab, if he were to have gotten infected, is incredibly dangerous. And so next to that lab is an NIH lab, a DHS lab, Department of Homeland Security, that we now have reports are doing experiments aerosolizing Ebola. We think that somebody representing the taxpayer and the citizens of the country ought to be able to take a look at these labs and find out what experiments they're doing, and really should we be doing some of this.
I think all of this you just said is really important because I think it answers two questions. One, it is backward looking in the context of Fauci should be seen as a villain of history, and his full trajectory of stories and lies should be analyzed for years to come. That's backwards looking. Prospectively, as you just laid out, the reason why this matters is if China created COVID, which I think it's quite clear that they did, partly based on having gain of function access to American taxpayer dollars, we should be massively concerned about, as you just laid out, whatever the next iteration of the virus that could be created is, because it could end up far more deadly than anything that we dealt with COVID. I think that's kind of a synthesis of all of this for people out there who would say, okay, why are we still talking about COVID?
Well, the next virus could be avian flu. Avian flu has a 50% death rate. Coronavirus or COVID was less than 1%. So avian flu currently, a human can get it from chickens or from birds, but it doesn't go human to human. But there are experiments trying to get it to go human to human, mammal to mammal through the air. These have been funded by NIH. This is the kind of stuff that has to be discussed. Is it a death wish for humanity for someone to try to get avian flu and make it more transmissible among humans? I think we should be shouting this from the rooftops. This kind of research should not occur, and the taxpayers shouldn't pay for it. But I don't know that we've actually gotten to that point yet. The Trump administration's ban, or at least temporary or maybe longer on this, is a good step. I have legislation that would do this. And we actually have gotten bipartisan support. I passed it out unanimously out of committee last Congress. I'm going to do it again in the next month or so, and then we're hoping it can be included in some kind of legislation that's going to pass soon. But this would actually let President Trump appoint a panel of scientists, and importantly, these scientists would not be ones who get NIH grants, so they can't be bribed to have an opinion. They will be independent voices, but experts in their field, and they will examine all government research, have access to all classified and unclassified documents, and they will give their opinion on whether it should be funded. And they will have the ability to stop funding. It'll be a powerful committee, but it won't be a total ban. It would be, we're going to look at case by case. The reason you need that is if you just ban it and then the next people come in and say, well, that's not gain of function, that's what Anthony Fauci did. Said, oh, yeah, we had special safety for gain of function, but this wasn't gain of function. Anthony Fauci to this day still argues that the research in Wuhan that led to the death of 6 to 10 million people, he said that wasn't gain of function, which nobody else believes other than Anthony Fauci.
Speaking to Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, Senator, on President Trump today, he spoke about the Houthis. I think he said there's a deal that they have now. Essentially, it's please stop bombing us and we'll stop blowing up ships. But the Houthis are an extension and allied with Iran. There's a lot of talk right now about one of kind of, I think you could say, a rare disconnect or disagreement at the senior levels of some of the Trump personnel. And it has to do with Iran and what we should do about Iran and its nuclear ambitions going forward. How do you see that? Where do you think Trump is on this, and where would you like to see this go?
I'm encouraged by the announcement today, and Trump shows great strength, and they back down. So I think that is a good thing. And my hope is that we can get to a point where international shipping is safe to go around the bend there and up through the Suez. With regard to Iran, my hope is that we can move forward. And this is where Trump is different than some of the neoconservatives. The neoconservatives never want to get to the next step of negotiation. So Trump goes in with a firm hand, but he does get to the next step of negotiation. He did it with North Korea. It didn't necessarily work out. But most of the neocons, from Hillary Clinton to Bill Kristol, would have never talked to North Korea. They would never talk to an Iran. Ultimately, getting to the point where we talk to them is good, because really the only realistic way of stopping them from getting a nuclear weapon is in all likelihood through diplomacy. I don't think you can bomb away their nuclear knowledge. I don't think once they have enriched uranium, a cup full of uranium enriched to 95 or 98% is probably enough for a bomb. Once you get 6 or 8 or 10 cupfuls of uranium, you're enriched to that point. You have the rest of the technical knowledge to do it. You can hide that thousands of feet below the ground where no bomb can get to. So, I don't want that to happen. We want to stop it, but ultimately it has to be both stick and carrot. And so ultimately you have to talk to people, and this is the same thing we should be doing with Russia. They're wanting to put more sanctions on Russia. The Lindsey Graham bill wants to put a 500% tariff on everybody who buys oil from Russia. You know what that is? That's about 40 or 50 countries buy oil and gas and from Russia. A 500% tariff would be a shutdown of basically all commerce in the world. I mean, it's a terrible idea. What we should be doing instead is going to Russia and say, you want to get back in the banking system? You want to get rid of some sanctions? Stop bombing Venezuela, and let's have a ceasefire and peace talks. I think we have the ability to offer stuff, but I think we have so many sanctions already on these countries that really, to get to diplomacy and get to peace, the peace should be offering to remove sanctions and allow Russia back into the banking world. But they have to do something real. It has to be a real ceasefire and has to really ultimately be a peace plan.
All right. I know it's a complicated topic, but I want to give you an opportunity to weigh in on tariffs and analyze this. Reports today that India might be willing to go to zero tariffs for American goods. It seems to me that there is dual arguments here. One is you hear from a lot of Trump people, hey, we want to actually eliminate many of the tariffs and have more free trade. The other argument is we need to have more protectionist trade, potentially with China, other countries. How do you analyze this? What should we do? And bigger picture, how does it impact the big, beautiful bill? I know that's a big question, but the tax cut bill that's currently making its way along with border security through Congress right now.
There's two camps on tariffs. They're all pro-tariff in the Trump administration, but two camps. One is the Neanderthal camp. The Neanderthal camp says that we keep tariffs on until there's no more trade deficits. Well, you think we're ever going to get to the point where Bangladesh buys as much from us as we buy from them? Same with Vietnam. We're a very, very rich country, and part of a trade deficit is when you're richer, you buy more stuff from other people than they buy from you. So that's a ridiculous Neanderthal sort of argument. The other camp says, well, we want reciprocal agreements, we want fairness, but we'd like to see lower tariffs. That's a more reasonable camp, and I've actually said, well, I'm not for the tariffs, and I think tariffs are misguided. If Trump is able to use as a negotiating technique the ability to lower tariffs with India, and they get to a much lower level than where we started, I'll be the first to compliment him on that. But realize that the tariff bill or the sanction bill that Lindsey is proposing on Russia actually would tariff, because India and China are the two biggest purchasers of oil and gas from Russia. And if you put a 500% tariff, that's going the opposite way. So I don't think we're going to zero if we pass this new Russia sanction bill that puts a 500% tariff. A 500% tariff is an embargo. It's almost like a declaration of war, basically. So it's a really, really, really foolish notion. But if they come up with a deal with India, I will be the first to compliment the president and say, great job. If he gets lower tariffs. We'll see what happens, but I think that should be the goal really with every country, and I would say even including China, because I think the moment that we have no trade with China is the moment that they become less predictable and potentially more militaristic.
Senator, one more for you. We only got about a minute, but I just wanted to hear you weigh in on this because I know government spending and our unsustainable debt is something you've been talking about for a long time. The DOGE cuts, I'm hearing there's been some cuts actually made, a lot of cuts advised. What do you think? Where are we on that?
None of them actually count until they come back to Congress. So if you say you've cut spending, unless it's actually booked by Congress and Congress votes on it, it hasn't been transmitted or accounted for. There's supposedly a rescission package. It can be voted on by a simple majority that's coming back to us of only $9 billion. That's a pittance. That's a rounding error. I'm for it, but I'll say send us more, please. We'll see. But right now we've been hearing about that for 2 weeks and haven't seen that. And if that gets over here and the weak-kneed Republicans won't vote for that, then I say, Katie, bar the door. You might as well plan on a full-scale bankruptcy of the country if the Congress can't even cut $9 billion.
On that note, Senator Rand Paul, thank you for being with us as always, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. He's right, by the way, on the numbers, and he knows it. And always such a good conversation with the senator from Kentucky. Few nonprofit organizations can make this claim: 350,000 lives saved. But that's exactly what Preborn has done over the 20 years of its existence. The Preborn clinics nationwide welcome pregnant moms into their facilities when that decision is being made. life or abortion. And here's what Preborn does. They welcome in all those moms. They give them love, support, attention, care, and a free ultrasound. Because when that mom meets the tiny life growing inside of her, I just went through this with my own boy, going to those ultrasound check-ins with my wife. It's incredible seeing that little heartbeat. And when mom sees that little heartbeat, the discussion is so much easier for, oh yeah, life for my unborn baby. Preborn is on the front line saving lives day in and day out this way. They do it with just $28 as their expense per ultrasound. $28. You could save a life with $28 of donation to Preborn. Some of you have very fortunate financial situations, and you can do $280 or even more. Whatever you can spare, Preborn will use for this incredible mission of saving tiny babies. To donate securely, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, say baby, or visit preborn.com/buck, preborn.com/BUCK. Sponsored by Preborn.